All right, let's begin. We are streaming live on Facebook now, so we're off and running. Hello, I'm Ann Luther with the League of Women Voters. Welcome on behalf of the League, our co-sponsors at the Ellsworth American, the Mount Desert Islander, the Weekly Packet, the Castine Patriot, and the Island Advantages. These great papers have joined the League in sponsoring this series of events. The League has been promoting voter participation for over 100 years. If you are interested in joining us at the League, we would welcome you as a member or volunteer. Our website is lwvme.org. For our event tonight, participants on Zoom will be muted throughout and the chat will be turned off. Participants on Zoom can submit questions through the Q&A box. You'll see that Q&A box on the bottom toolbar of your Zoom screen. We have received quite a few questions in advance, but I think we do have time to take some live from the audience. So if you put your question in, Chris will try to work it into the rotation. We will not be monitoring questions on Facebook, though. We do have somebody monitoring the Facebook comments, but only to make sure that we keep the conversation civil. If you're on Facebook live stream and want to ask a question, it's not too late to join the Zoom. Go to lwvme.org/events and register now to get a participant link. You can come right over and jump right into the Zoom webinar. The Facebook video will be available later today, probably for your viewing on Facebook and through our online voter guide at vote411.org. The League of Women Voters of Maine posts recordings of forms in order to inform voters. These recordings are unedited. Viewers may share or embed the complete video. However, no parties are authorized to download, edit, or distribute any part of this recording without written consent of the League of Women Voters of Maine. Excerpts and/or edited clips or recordings may not be used for partisan, political, and/or campaign purposes. We appreciate your cooperation in this. Let me now introduce our moderator for tonight. It's Chris Crockett. Chris is the publisher of Mainstay Media, which includes the Ellsworth American, Mount Desert Islander, and several other Maine weekly papers. He is the just outgoing president of the Maine Press Association. Thank you for doing this for us. Chris, I'll turn it over to you now, and I'll see you back here at the end.
Great. Thank you, Ann. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this and many candidate forums this year. And welcome, everybody. And thank you for joining us tonight. As Ann said, my name is Chris Crockett. I'm the publisher of the Ellsworth American, the Republican Journal, as well as a handful of other weekly newspapers along the coast. With us tonight are the candidates for House District 17, which includes Bucksport, Orland, Penobscot, and Verona Island. On November's ballot is Sherman Hutchins, the Republican incumbent candidate from Penobscot, and Ron Russell, the Democrat candidate from Verona Island. First, let me introduce Sherman Hutchins. Sherm lives in Penobscot and is seeking a third term in the Maine House. Sherm worked at Pratt and Whitney Aircraft and Engineering in the engineering department, designing engines for the F-15 fighter and the Boeing 707 prior to establishing his own construction business in 1968, which he ran for 25 years. During this time and for the last 20 years, he has worked for the Wilson Museum in Castine and is associated with the restoration of the John Perkins House, redesigning the museum campus and repurposing a barn he built in the 80s for what is now the Hutchins Education Campus. For the last 30 years, Sherm has served as moderator for several towns in and around his district. Next, we have Ron Russell. Ron was born in Bangor in 1949 and grew up in Penobscot and Castine. Ron graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 1971 and has been married to Janine Jewett of Bucksport for 50 years. Ron lived on a farm on Verona Island for 44 years, where he and his wife raised their 4 children. Ron now has 8 beautiful grandchildren. He worked for Darlings and Brewer for 42 years and retired in 2018. Throughout his life, Ron has volunteered to give back to his community. He currently serves on the board of the Heart of Maine United Way, Main Street Bucksport, and the Northeast Historical Film. Ron is an active member of the Bucksport community and the Economic Development Committee and the Mill Museum Working Group. The rules for tonight are as follows. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to give an opening statement. The candidates will be asked 3 questions that they have received in advance of tonight's forum and will be given 3 minutes to answer. I'll switch between candidates as the questions are asked, giving each an opportunity to answer a question first. Audience members are invited to submit questions via the Q&A feature here on Zoom, and only questions submitted using that feature will be seen by me. Questions will be selected by me and may be reworded. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions submitted by our audience. We've also received questions via email from constituents ahead of tonight's forum. Some questions submitted might be directed at a single candidate, but both will have an opportunity to respond. With all of that said, let's get started. First up, Mr. Hutchins, your opening remarks.
All right, my opening remarks, I should start by saying with what you mentioned that I have a wife by the name of Patricia for 55 years. I don't think that was in your remarks.
Oh, it was not.
And 10 grandchildren, and just recently 2 great-grandsons. I believe our rights are under attack somewhat now, more than they have been in the past. Joe Biden's failed record on crime, its long-term effects. Martha's Vineyard, I think, just recently would show you a little bit of that, where about 50 aliens were flown in, I believe, from Florida. It took them 44 hours to get rid of those. In El Paso, Texas, they get 1,900 of those every day. I believe that kitchen table issues are something we need to address. Parental basic rules are a standard that must be respected. I believe we need a parent, teacher, school children Bill of Rights. We can no longer afford tax and spend policies like we have been accustomed to in the last few years, especially. Crime is up. The economy is headed down. Inflation is the highest it's been in decades. Because of inflation, the average income has been reduced by something like $5,000, maybe as much as $6,000 a year to buy just the same things that people were buying 2 years ago. Governor Mills kept Maine's locked down for 18 months. Ignoring the First Amendment was what bothered me the most about her time in emergency ruling, if that's what you want to call it, because it closed churches, which is absolutely forbidden under the First Amendment. I know she had emergency powers, but if all that we had done was tell people, you know, you need to be careful and stay separated, they would have done so. But closing churches led to people that couldn't get to their pastor for help. It led to AA meetings that were canceled for long periods of time, which led to more suicides of people that needed those AA meetings. I know personally a fellow who has told me of a couple of cases of that. Free Florida didn't do any of that and didn't have any worse outcomes than we did. Governor Mills crushed the economy and hid behind an emergency for 18 months. The United States is drawing down strategic oil reserves, even selling some to China. Under Joe Biden in 19 months, the cost of fuel more than doubled, heating oil, the price of which is going to cripple us this winter. Fortunately, we have put some extra aside to help people. Our southern border is open, leading to deaths of 100,000 youths the last year from illegal drugs passing over that border. He is actually very responsible for those.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hutchins.
All right.
Out of time. Next up, Mr. Russell, your opening remarks.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you to the League of Women Voters, the Ellsworth American, Ann Luther, and Chris, yourself, for your hard work in staging this event. My name is Ron Russell, and I want to begin with a story that starts to give you an idea of why I've taken on this challenge in my busy retired life. Shortly after being chosen as a candidate in early August, We were visited, or should I say invaded, by our entire large family, 8 parents and 8 grandchildren in all. It was big news that Pops, that's my grandfather's name, was running in an election. Our oldest granddaughter, Rose, 10, soon to be 11, wanted to be involved. She insisted that I needed a campaign theme, so we set to work on it. I said, we have to come up with something that was a common thread in the 4 towns, something that was both literally and figuratively true. After some work, we had it, the Penobscot River. Verona Island is in the middle of it, and the towns of Bucksport, Orland, and Penobscot, one after the other, grace its eastern shore. Our theme, there's a common river that runs through all of us. This I know to be true both ways. If I did not believe this, I would not have run. Throughout my life in all its manifestations, as a son, husband, father, grandfather, businessman, volunteer, and now a candidate, I've tried to listen to others, really hearing what they had to say, be fair, understand what challenges people face, act in ways to help them meet those challenges, and support the rights of all people in an equal and passionate way. I've been blessed in having incredible role models and many advantages in my life and my family's lives. With that comes great responsibility to find and work towards a truer equity in opportunity, resources, and basic human rights for people and their families, regardless of race, gender, nationality, origin, or religious beliefs. Here in Maine, we are lucky. I think all Mainers have a sense of fairness, equality, and justice. Sometimes we don't let each other see it, but I believe it's there. My life has given me many experiences that can help bring that to light. Then by working together, we'll get things done and make the real progress we all want towards a better future. That is why I'm running to represent every person in Bucksport, Orland, Penobscot, and Verona Island.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. And now we can start with the questions. I'll begin with you, Mr. Hutchins. Our first question for tonight is, what are the impacts of the changing climate in District 17, and how can they be addressed by the legislature?
I think you asked about the climate change question. Your voice was very shaky, so I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it's the climate change question.
All right. The largest impact in Maine so far has been the considerable cost increases of energy, oil, and electric. What should have been done to start with was we needed a more serious study of the impact of climate change, because the climate is changing, right? We all know that. But we seem to end up, every state in the union seems to end up with the same cookie cutter solution to what we're starting to work with. I think one of the worst things that we did right off the bat, somebody came up with the slogan, Maine can't wait, which meant that's kind of like the kid under the Christmas tree. He can't wait. He's going to open anything that's in front of him. And I think that's basically what we did with trying to come up with programs like, for instance, swapping to electric cars over a short period of time. We have 7,000 electric cars in the state of Maine. We have 1 million cars. It'll take a century to swap that so that it's the other way around. So our proposal, isn't going to work. If we were charging thousands of electric cars all at the same time, it would take at least 1 or 2 nuclear plants or the equivalent to do that. And that's not going to happen with either solar or wind power. There just isn't enough area to do that. So we just haven't thought it out very well, and we need to. And unfortunately, we're spending huge sums of money. And when we do finally come to the right solution, because we're going to need to, it's going to be harder and harder to afford it, because we will have wasted so much money on Maine can't wait.
Great, thank you. Mr. Russell?
We have lived on our farm on Verona Island for over 40 years. On the farm, we have a stand of old apple trees, a small hillside of wild blueberries, and extensive gardens of mostly native flowers that were the staple of my wife's wedding flower business for nearly 20 years. In some ways, the changes we have seen are a microcosm of the effects of climate change in our district and state. The apple trees that John Bunker from MOFGA says may be one of the older stands in Maine are under threat from more frequent periods of drought and now brown-tailed moths, which can kill the trees in one season. Our blueberries are affected by increasing temperatures and drought. New insects we have not seen are continuing to arrive with new frequency. Ticks abound in our woods and fields. Plant winter kill from lack of snow cover is ever more common. All of this affects farmers in our district. The Gulf of Maine is warming faster than any other East Coast body of water. Our vital lobster fishery is under threat of this change and new federal regulations. The list of impacts goes on. In other parts of our country, these changes are even more extreme. Maine and our district can expect more in-migration of new residents escaping unbearable conditions elsewhere, putting increased pressure on our need for more housing and its cost. This in turn will add to our need for skilled labor to meet the demands of a growing population. I think the work of the Governor's Climate Council is a step in the right direction, and I will support its continuing work. Legislation that removes excessive regulations to innovative approaches to affordable housing is a priority for me. Legislation that helps find workable solutions for our farmers, fishermen, and forest products workers must be a part of our state budget. I will work for accessible, affordable education opportunities that train our workforce to meet these demands. The recent one-time legislation that offers 2 years of community college to 2020 to 2023 Maine high school graduates is the type of legislation we need to expand upon. Change is hard, but with change comes great opportunity. I will work hard to learn the legislative process and work diligently with all fellow legislators to find real solutions to our many challenges related to the effects of the changing climate on our district and the state.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. And I will stay with you for the next question. What are the major economic problems in District 17, and how do you propose addressing them locally and in the legislature?
I see two general types of common economic problems in our 4 towns. The first are problems immediate in nature brought on by the pandemic and other world events like the war in Ukraine. Things like high energy prices, high food prices, and a shortage of available labor to run our small businesses. Some of these are difficult to fix at the state and local level. Yet there are always creative ways to help. At the local level, we can support those most affected by being neighbors supporting neighbors. I have witnessed this through my work with the United Way, Main Street Bucksport, other local organizations, businesses, and town governments. This work is real and makes a difference. I have seen it in action and will continue to be involved as I move to work at the state level. At the state level, I see the work of a legislator to communicate these immediate economic challenges facing HD 17 to fellow legislators and find common purpose in addressing these challenges through fiscally responsible programs that offer help where it is most needed, especially if that help can be in partnership with efforts at the local level. The second type of economic problems and challenges in our district are more systemic. Things like local housing needs, property tax relief, funding for education, business opportunity, unyielding regulations, infrastructure spending, revenue sharing, job creation, and real communication to our citizens about the challenges we face and an innovative collaborative approach to unique solutions. I have participated in real actions at the local level, mainly through my volunteer work in Bucksport. At the end of 2014, Bucksport suffered the loss of its 80-year-old paper mill. the largest employer in HD 17. Over 600 jobs were lost, with a good portion in the district. The mill represented 40% of the town's property tax basis. It did not reopen and was subsequently torn down. Through the collaborative efforts of local citizens, town government, and input from the state, Bucksport has become an ongoing success story, yet remains a work in progress. I will use the lessons learned in Bucksport to find true, meaningful economic programs to support the towns of HD 17 and others throughout the state. I am new to this and do not have all the answers, but I have dealt with both immediate and longer-term economic issues throughout my business career and at the local level successfully. I intend to do the same in Augusta.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hutchins, up to you.
All right, thank you very much. Economic problems of the area are the same economic problems all over the country. The war on our economy started the day Joe Biden was sworn in, when he closed off pipelines and things of that nature, leading to the highest inflation that we've had in 40 or 50 years. In the 1970s, we reached a point where we had 13.3% inflation. Today, our inflation rate is 8.3%. But food and fuel are not combined into the inflation rate anymore. If they were, we would probably be about 15% inflation. This winter, the cost of heat is going to cripple many people, and I certainly hope no one freezes from it. But it is a genuine concern. As I go around the district talking with people, especially people that deliver oil, they are very concerned. We did add, like I said before, $30 million to the fuel assistance program. We need to encourage people to go back to work to help stop the supply chain. So many people have been taken out of the work stream, some of them because Medicare started taking care of an additional 55,000 young people that are capable to work that are not working right now, because if they do, they lose their Medicare. We need to make that a way for them to step off slowly and get back into the workforce. Regulations need to be fewer and sustained. Taxes need to be reduced to allow industry to plan employment for Maine. As I go around the district, I talk to people about reducing regulation and fewer taxes. When Democrats go around, I wonder if they do the same thing, because when they're in power, they increase regulations and increase taxes. And I'm curious as to whether they tell the constituents when they're knocking on the door and talking with them if they're going to be okay doing that, because I don't think the constituents are okay with that. We need to abolish a bunch of heavy boards and commissions that we are heavy in. There's well over 200 boards that don't even meet because they aren't, many of them don't meet because they don't have people to fill them. So government is just too top heavy, and we need to start bringing that part down and bringing the private economy back up. And there's nothing better for anyone to do than to go to work and feel the ability of a good job well done.
Thank you. And I will stick with you, Mr. Hutchins, for the next
All right.
question. What are the challenges for healthcare in District 17, including mental and behavioral health, and how should the legislature address them?
Some of the major challenges on healthcare are self-inflicted, actually, in this state. Many nurses, some doctors were fired because they weren't able to take the vaccination. And so we lost these people that worked, many of them, for 2 years during the first of the COVID crisis, protecting themselves and others and saving lives, at which point they were heroes. And as soon as the vaccination came along, Those that couldn't take it, and some can't. I had one nice young lady come up to me in the halls of the State House one day, tears running down her face. A nurse that wasn't able to work, or wasn't going to be able to, because she was going to be fired. She had taken one shot trying to do what the hospital wanted, and one side of her went to sleep for a couple of days. The other side was all right. She said, I can't take the second shot. And she's not alone. A lot of people were like that had, different reasons why they shouldn't take and again, this is the kind of heavy-handedness that the Mills administration has done. And one of the things we're going to have to do when she loses is reinstate those nurses and apologize to them for the harm we did to them.
Thank you. Mr.
Yep.
Russell? Mr. Russell, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, now I can. Are you ready for me? The next question, Chris?
No, the same question. What are the
The same
challenges for healthcare in District 17, including mental and behavioral health, and how should the legislature address them?
Sure. While going door to door through the district over the past few weeks, healthcare has been one of the most common topics on voters' minds. In Penobscot, I had a man who works full-time that has insurance and struggles to pay his prescription drug costs. During our conversation, he opened the kitchen cupboard, showed me his stack of necessary pills, and then opened the refrigerator door to display his insulin that costs him $215 per dose. Asking me how is he supposed to pay for this while bringing home a net paycheck under $500 per week. Or the lady in Orland who told me how she could no longer care for her husband with severe Alzheimer's due to his being now wheelchair bound and exhibiting ever more aggressive behavior. She told me he was in the Ellsworth Hospital for 4 months, or had been in the Ellsworth Hospital for 4 months, awaiting placement in a proper facility that just isn't there. Another lady told me about a young homeless man, wheelchair bound, that had no place to turn. I can't help but wonder how my dad, a country doctor who brought compassionate medical care to people's doors in these towns, would feel about our current state of affairs in healthcare. When I think there are politicians that want to get rid of the Medicaid expansion, diminish Medicare itself, and end Obamacare with no alternatives in mind, I wonder where we would be. But real work is being done in Maine. The healthcare training for me, part of the Maine Jobs Recovery Act, addresses workplace shortages in healthcare facilities. The Made for Maine Health Coverage Act has shown real results in stabilizing insurance premiums. The allocation of state COVID recovery funds to our nursing homes in the state budget is welcome news. There is so much more that needs to be done. I will work towards programs supporting seniors remaining in their homes. Support of rural health centers is a must for our district and across the state. Homelessness and the associated mental health problems are growing concerns. In our district, in a neighboring district, 2 long-time nursing homes have closed. The challenges are many, and I believe through cooperation and a genuine interest to work together, these problems can be addressed. I have not listened to one voter that does not want us to find solutions to these challenges.
All right, thank you. Now we will move on to the questions that have been submitted by our audience. We'll again start with you, Mr. Russell. And I can repeat the question since you guys haven't seen these ahead of time. Let me know if you need them repeated. The US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs case, returning the abortion issue to the states. Would you support changing Maine's abortion laws?
I would not support changing Maine's abortion laws. Maine's law currently respects and guarantees the right of women to choose her reproductive health care. I believe that is her right and her right alone. I do not believe that government should overstep its bounds and make this decision for a woman, nor do I believe that government should choose who we love or who we marry. I believe the law as it stands, which is abortions up until viability and to save the life of a mother in the last trimester, is the proper thing, a proper law that we should have, and I would not support any changes.
Thank you. And Mr. Hutchins, I'll ask you the same question. The U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs case, returning an abortion issue to the states. Would you support changing Maine's abortion laws?
Well, of course, that's where it should be, is in the states. That's where the democratic process will work its way out over time, probably. As Ron said, that right now state law is the same as the federal law was, so no change is going to be anticipated, I suspect, for some time. But over a period of years, there may be some changes that'll come through debate back and forth. 60% of people in the country believe abortion needs to stay legal. 60% also believe it should only be legal in the first trimester. So somewhere in there over the next number of years, there will be a process that makes its way through the legislative process and becomes law. But it's hard to say at this point just where that will be. Thanks.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is, will you accept the results of any election whose results have been certified or confirmed by the Maine Secretary of State? And you can start this one off, Mr. Hutchins.
Yeah, the state of Maine doesn't have a lot of problem with election tampering. A little bit in some of the areas where there are more people, there will be more questions. But in the smaller towns that we deal with here, the chances of anything going on that would be out of the ordinary are pretty remote. I deal with many towns, moderating their town meetings, and I've done it 150 times or better. And usually the results of anything in these local towns is very dependable.
Great, thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Russell. Will you accept the results of any election whose results have been certified or confirmed by the Maine Secretary of State?
Yes, I would accept those results. I feel that voting not only in Maine, but in our country at large is reliable and safe. And I do not think that we need to put restrictions on voting. I think voting should be as easy as possible. I think voter registration should be as easy as possible so that all citizens have a equal chance to cast their ballot.
Thank you. And I will stay with you for the next question. Do you support legislation giving election workers enhanced protection from harassment and violence?
I would certainly consider that if I was given reliable information that election workers in this state are under such threats. I suspect probably there are, as what I read about what is going on in many parts of the country. So I think that a law supporting the protection that they might need makes sense when it comes to the safety of election workers.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hutchins, the same question. Do you support legislation giving election workers enhanced protections from harassment and violence?
It might not even require extra legislation because we already protect jurors and judges when they're in a dangerous type court trials and that kind of thing. So it maybe could just easily be extended when it was thought possible that it was needed. But I never have seen any case in the state where anything more than the local police officer or constable wasn't enough to make sure that if somebody got a little bit loud and boisterous, they could be, shown the door pretty easily. So usually I don't think that's something, I hope not anyway, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it if it was needed.
Thank you. The next question I have is going to switch over to the broadband issue that has plagued many parts of Maine, including some of the communities in your district. What are the things that you as a legislature can do to help solve the broadband access issues in your district? Well, that's you, Mr. Hutchins.
Oh, okay. Well, we are stringing a lot more of the cable now because of putting quite a lot of the stimulus money to use doing that. I guess it made a pretty good use of the stimulus money. The only problem is stimulus money is the major reason that we're having such inflation. We put too much money after too few goods, and that's inflation. So that's part of the problem. But in the end, we are in the process of stringing a lot more cable, going to be able to hook up a lot more communities. And I believe even my community has had the new cable run through it. It isn't hooked up yet, but I believe it's been run through it. So it is going to be a big help for people that can work from home. Many people can nowadays, or at least part of the time. And so that's a big help because it helps on the transportation and all of those things that add to expenses that this will help alleviate some of those expenses.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, the same question. What can you and the legislature do to help solve some of the broadband access issues in District 17?
Well, my understanding is that there is monies in a couple of new federal bills, the infrastructure bill and possibly the Inflation Reduction Act, that make more monies available for broadband. So what there is available there, we should take advantage of. I think this is as crucial as phone service was way back in the 20s or 30s when it happens. Especially when you consider that many young people, like 3 of the 4 of our children, make their living online, either through a business or the type of work that they do. That'll be essential in attracting young people to our state, which we need, and making those type of gig workers to find a friendly place here. I know we did not have it here at the farm until just a few years ago, and it was very difficult for them when they came to visit, because usually they had to continue working, especially our daughter from California that came here for an entire month and still does, and she worked while she was here. Prior to our hookup, she had to sometimes drive into town and park beside the bookstore just to be able to work. So it's something that we need to spend the money on, we need to dedicate it to, and we need to get it to every resident in Maine.
Thank you. Next question, and I'll stay with you, Mr. Russell. What have you learned during the campaign from speaking to the voters in your district?
I think you're going to take my thunder away from my closing statement, but I've learned a lot. I, was somewhat skeptical about going into this. I'd done a lot of volunteer work in Bucksport since I retired, and actually even before I retired. And then when some folks asked, would you be the candidate? It did give me pause. But what I would say is, after now going throughout the district and knocking on a few hundred doors and talking to people, which I was apprehensive about as well, I did not find what I expected. I found that there's really, sort of, you go back to that, there's a common river that runs through us, through all of us in this district. And I believe that's there. I've seen it. With listening, people really want the same things. They want their legislator to work for those things. They want them to collaborate with other legislators to get things done. And I've been surprised by the amount that people will open up and have had the opportunity to listen carefully to many, many voters and what's on their minds and what they would like to see. And I think I'm sort of a middle of the road person. And I think they're looking for that. I'm used to working collaboratively and getting things done. We did it in our business, which grew significantly over the years I was there. And it would not have happened if we hadn't done things together. So that probably is my biggest surprise. You would think from what you hear that it isn't out there, but I can tell you that it is.
Thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Hutchins. What have you learned during the campaign from speaking with the voters in your district?
The campaign is one of the enjoyable things that legislators do, or it is for me anyway. I really enjoy talking with the constituents in the area. It's a great way to remember, what happened 2 years ago when you talked with them, or 4 years ago when first time you met them, or that kind of thing. 4 years ago when I first ran for this district, the district was a little different at that time, of course. The district included Prospect and Stockton Springs and Dedham and Otis. Those 4 towns are now gone, and Bucksport is in its place. But as I go around, the people in all of these towns are just great, wonderful people, and they are anxious to give me their opinions on what they're doing and what we need done. They're very concerned about this winter. That is probably the biggest concern of people that I've been talking with this last few weeks, especially because they're beginning to think about heat at this point. And that's a big point in their thinking, because they, what are you going to do if you can't afford to keep warm? That makes it pretty tough. So that's the most interesting part about the campaign and meeting the people, and I enjoy very much doing so.
Thank you. I'll stay with you, Mr. Hutchins, for the next question. What experience have you had with working with people of different backgrounds and political positions to find common ground and compromise?
Well, of course, being in the legislature, you work with different people of different backgrounds, naturally, from folks of all sides, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or Independent, or Green Party. There's always an issue or two that isn't so much because of party. It's because of maybe you both live in a rural area. I've worked with John Martin before on rural issues. Of course, he lives as far north as you can get without stepping into Canada almost. But it's a rural issue like we have down here. And so there's a great many times where the issues that we work on come together, not because of party politics, but because of where the issue itself, and in my case, would be rural. Sometimes you go and you talk with people from the cities because the issue is something to do with the city and you need their opinions. I used to work a lot with the humble farmer's brother, James, down in Topsham. And that was 30 years ago when I was in the legislature the first time. He was a Democrat, a retired teacher. And I would, in fact, we did lunches real often because we wanted to discuss different issues. And so working together is something that if you don't do it, you're going to be awful stagnant. You really do need to get all of the opinions from different people. And in the State House, it's not uncommon to have 100 people in the halls. Like I told you, the young nurse that came to me that was so distressed that she was going to lose her job, and she has. She deserves it back. I hope she gets it. I will help her do so if I possibly can. And that's just the kind of thing that you have to do to make people whole again. So working with everybody that walks in that State House is important.
Thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Russell. What experience do you have working with people of different backgrounds or political backgrounds and political positions to find common ground and compromise.
So, like you said, when you read sort of my bio in the beginning, for 42 years, I worked for the Darlings family. They're a wonderful family and they have a wonderful business. For me to say that politically we're exactly on the same page would not probably be an exact statement. But I know through the years when it came to customers, growing the business, employees, that we found common ground all the time. And because our concerns when it came to things that involved locally, the business itself, finding reasons and ways to get together on things became more important than, say, party politics. I noticed in the beginning when Sherm talked a lot, he talked a lot about national issues. They're out there, but I have to say, they did not come up much when I was out speaking to people in the district. I hope he's right that there are people in the legislature that are willing to work together to come to common solutions, because that's what I know how to do. I've done it not only in my business career, but I've done it in my volunteer work. The example of Bucksport again, many residents with different ideas on how the town should move forward, different ideas on the town council, different ideas on other groups. We've really all come together to work towards making our town a better place, overcoming the setback it had from the mill closure. And I think I can use those experiences to move forward.
Thank you. The next question will stay with you, Mr. Russell. Should the state pay to allow parents to send their children to any school they want? And if so, any guess to how much that would cost and how the state would raise the money to pay for it?
I don't really know how much it would cost, and I think that we need to be very careful here. There is a public school system that takes all comers, and that needs to be the case if monies leave the public school system to go to another venue. The state has a set of standards that must be met. If this was even to be considered, those standards would have to, those same standards would have to be met by any private institution. In general, I would say I would be very skeptical of this, because I think if I'm not mistaken, in our Bill of Rights, or there is a public school is something that our country should do, just like the post office. And I think that we have to be very careful that we don't put one at risk to the benefit of another. So I would certainly listen to legislation. If it raised the cost, I think that is another thing that would make it very difficult to approve legislation like that. But I am open, like I said, to working collaboratively with people, especially if it's something that a large number of constituents would like us to look into.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchins, the same question to you. Should the state pay to allow parents to send their children to any school they want? And if so, a guess of how much that would cost and how the state would raise the money to pay for it?
Well, of course, some of it wouldn't be state money. Some of it would be local money, because smaller communities like Penobscot, where I live, does pay to send children to high school anywhere they want to go. And it's a set amount. So it's no more than they spend to go to the local schools, whether it's Blue Hill or Bucksport, although Blue Hill is more. So that's, it is a proposal that is done. so the money following the child is good if you can do it and when you can do it, because it helps competition, and competition would help public schools. I was having a discussion on the floor of the House back last April, and I think it was the 28th of April. So anybody could look it up if they wanted to see the argument on the floor. We had passed several pieces of legislation, and one of them that passed was, or didn't pass, it failed, was to allow parents to ask the superintendent and the school board to keep their child back a year because of COVID slowing their progress so much. And the school board, even though it went through the education department with a positive recommendation, when it came to the floor, the amendment was made by Michael Brennan, who was chair of the education committee, to pass the minority budget, which was to fail it. And that is what ended up happening, because the school unions didn't want to make it look like they were doing poorer job, I suppose, I guess. I don't know why for sure. And I mentioned at the time, if you keep adding all of these regulations to the school boards around the state, you're going to end up with schools that are populated with special education children only. And that is happening, because homeschool and private school is exploding. So it is happening. And that's part of the reason why.
Thank you. I will stick with you, Mr. Hutchins, for the next question. Explain why you are or are not a clean elections candidate.
I am not a tax-funded candidate. I think the name was pretty clever when it was passed, because if you're not a government funded, then you're a dirty funded candidate, I guess. But I never felt comfortable about taking money from taxpayers of the state to run for a position to represent them. It just doesn't seem right. And what it has done over the years, it has exploded the cost of running campaigns. A campaign not too many years ago for the House, $5,000 or $6,000 would have run a campaign with, all kinds of lawn signs and everything you need. Today, I think the so-called clean election, or the taxpayer, is I think 16 or 18,000 that the candidate gets, and for the Senate it's something like $60,000 that the candidate gets, which just frees up the dark money that would normally go to the candidates, from whatever agency that maybe agrees with them, will send them a few $100s or, that kind of thing. And so it has freed up that money to be used as dark campaigning, as it's called, to totally influence the cost of elections into 2 and 3 times what they used to cost, not that many years ago. I think this was first, taxpayer funding was first done approximately 30 years ago. And I remember a constituent of mine at the time was very opposed to it being called clean election. And her name was Doris Russell.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Same question to you, Mr. Russell. Explain why you are or are not a clean election candidate.
Thank you for that plug for my mother, Sherm. I mean, she certainly was a prominent Republican, and I respect her for that. She did it starting when she was 15 years old until she still does, even though I'm not sure of her party affiliation anymore. Anyway, I am a clean election candidate. And while I could have afforded an election, the reason I became a clean election candidate was because I thought it was fair. And honestly, I think the program that Maine has is a good one. If 30 years ago a campaign cost $5,000, I know how most things have changed in the last 30 years. I don't think this is far off. I don't know what it is in inflation adjusted dollars, but the candidate needs to earn what's available. And you have to solicit donations, small, for the fund itself to actually receive the funds. I did it because I think that one of the problems we have in this country is that elections are too flooded with money. And this gives the opportunity, at least in Maine, to be on fair footing for anybody who wants to try to go to the legislature, whether they can afford a campaign or whether they cannot, and not be at a disadvantage to somebody that can afford it. And while somebody else might have to go out and raise funds to be in the same position, that to me doesn't seem fair. And that's why I decided to be one. And what I've seen so far, I think it's a good program. And I will certainly talk to my mother and try to convince her that maybe she didn't make the right choice way back many years ago.
All right, thank you. I'm going to try to squeeze in two more quick questions before we get to the closing statement. The first one is, and I'll start with you, Mr. Russell. A 2021 poll showed that 64% of Mainers support ending the sale of flavored tobacco products, but the Maine State Legislature has not yet passed legislation on the issue. Do you support a bill ending the sale of flavored tobacco products?
I do.
Great. That was a quick one. All right. Same question over to you, Mr. Hutchins.
Well, I think you're determining that you want to not have children have flavored tobacco is what we're talking about. Well, it's already illegal for children to buy tobacco anyway. But if doing away with the flavor would help fewer of them smoke, that's probably not such a bad idea. But the problem with the vaping products, it looked like to me when they first came out, I thought they were something to stop people from smoking. I never have been a smoker, so that was my first initial thought, that it was a good way to get people to quit. And come to find out, it's actually worse than the cigarettes. And so the fact that they're flavored evidently helps entice children, but it's already illegal for children to smoke.
Thank you. And this will be the last question. It's been asked a handful of times. So do you believe, and we'll stick with you, Mr. Hutchins, for this, do you believe that Joe Biden was legitimately elected president in 2020?
Yeah, I think he was. We've been through the process. The different states certified it, and that made it legal. I think there are quite a considerable number of people that think there probably was some funny business in about 5 counties in the country, but we don't have a mechanism in our counting system that gets a handle on that very well. And so we don't know if there was or if there wasn't, but we should have better chances to make sure that we do the proper thing. I had a bill in the legislature this year to make sure anyone that did an absentee ballot, it's your ballot. And if you go in a few days before election and say, I want my absentee ballot back because I've changed my mind, you can do that. But if you go in election day and they've already opened your absentee ballot, my bill was to make sure they couldn't open it until it was time to count it. If they've already opened it, they don't count them, but sometimes they open them a day early just to get them ready to make it quick. Then it's separated from its envelope and you no longer know. And so if someone has voted for you, which rarely happens, but it does, and that's going to cut you out. They're going to say, no, you've already voted, and you know you haven't. So I put a bill in to do that, just to make sure that ballot would stay sealed until 8 o'clock election time. And I didn't have any luck at all with it. Once it made the floor of the House, no more than I did when I tried to do away with taxpayer funded for the governor's race, because the governor's race is something that if you do qualify for it and want to do so-called clean election, you get $1 million. And there's no chance you're going to get elected governor with a mere $1 million. So it's a total waste of time for the governor. But that also failed.
All right, thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Russell. Do you believe that Joe Biden was legitimately elected president in 2020?
I do. And just a little bit in response to Sherm on the counties in the country. I know one was in Georgia, and as far as I know, they had 3 recounts that verified that not once, not twice, but 3 times. I think the election speaks for itself with the number of voters, and it was an important election that had 2 stark choices, and I think that the choice that was made, I agree with, and I feel it was 100% legitimate. And as Sherm said, there were challenges, and those challenges were not successful.
Thank you. So we've run out of time for tonight. Thank you, each of you, for taking the time to participate in tonight's forum. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting it together.
Chris, I'm going to butt in here and say, give them time for their closing statements.
Yep.
Oh,
And
sorry.
you'll each, no problem.
Sorry.
You'll each have 2 minutes for your closing statements, and we'll start with you, Mr. Hutchins, your closing statement.
All right, my closing statement is to finish the story when I talked about the education department passing regulations that are making it more difficult for parents to send their school to regular public schools. Instead, they're either homeschooling or private schooling, even at the increased cost. And when I said that on the floor, Mike Brennan, who was the chair of the education committee, jumped into the air after I had said that we needed to recognize what parents wanted. He jumped in the air and he said, quote, "We give far too much credit to the influence of parents in the education of their children." He said that out loud on the floor of the House. I couldn't believe that an elected representative that works for the people could say something like that. That is the most amazing thing. April 28th, 2021, I think it was. And it so shocked me. I made him famous. I texted it out about 50 times because I couldn't believe anybody would be that foolish as an elected official to say something like that. But he does believe it. And he's chairman of the education committee in the state of Maine. And that's a serious, serious mistake. And the only reason he is there is because there are more Democrats than Republicans in the legislature. And that has to change, or else we're going to have to deal with people like him for years to come. And that's a terrible thing to have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, your closing statement.
So from early in my life, my parents set an example of being involved and the importance of that in helping others and leading a full life. I've worked hard to do that. I've watched others do the same through nonprofits, churches, schools, community organizations, businesses, individual acts of giving, and yes, the good work of government, especially here in Maine. I know some say government is the problem until all of a sudden it isn't. Look to Florida and the devastating effects of Ian. Our government is there working with a collaborative of local, state, and federal agencies as it should be. They are joined by insurance companies, businesses, nonprofits, and many others. It is such a spirit of cooperation and working with others that I plan to take to Augusta. It is not in my nature to be combative or to believe only what I think counts. Yes, there will be honest disagreements and government can overreach. When relating my experiences in talking to hundreds of voters over the last few weeks, I tell them about a number of things I did not necessarily expect. The great divisions we hear about don't seem to be there as much as we are told, and with a little listening, there is much common ground. On top of that, the question of the party of my candidacy is rare. The experience has heartened me to believe my moderate approach is on the right track, and real consensus is not only possible, but desired. I will use what I have learned listening to voters and hearing the many challenges they face. I will communicate with them on a regular basis to relay the progress being made and continue to hear their ideas, thoughts, and wishes. I'm optimistic about the future and I ask for your vote.
Thank you. And I think I will, again, thank everybody for attending tonight and throw it back to Ann.
Thank you so much, Chris. You did a beautiful job. We really appreciate your moderating tonight's forum. Thank you to both the candidates. Thank you both for your willingness to run and serve. It's public service, and we really appreciate it. And thank you as well for participating tonight. We hope many voters will have a chance to watch this after the live event and learn a lot more about both of you. So we really appreciate it. That's all for tonight. Thank you again, everybody who's online and all of you who are here as panelists.
Thanks very much.
Bye. Yeah,
Thank you.
bye now.